you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
And here's your host, Rich Barris. Welcome to Inside the Numbers, folks. And it is Friday, Freewheeling Friday. We'll be joined with Don soon to talk about what's going on with Oz and McCormick. All right. Look, by the way, I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. All right, it's been a couple crazy days for me, as you can imagine. Not much sleep. All right, look, let's do an update on Pennsylvania first. Then we'll talk about the public polling project. Then we'll bring it all back when we bring in Don, hopefully a little bit early, to get through as many questions as you guys have, because we've been running way over. So I told Don, you know what, just, if he can, come on at the top of the hour. And then we'll try to roll through it. All right. I want to explain a little bit about how people project who's going to win an election, as I explained Pennsylvania. All right. And when things get super close, like they have in Pennsylvania, look, folks, and by the time votes are counted, 1.35 million votes, ballpark easy, in the state of Pennsylvania on the Republican side, $50 million plus easy. And yet it comes down to 1,000 or so votes. And I actually thought that it would be below 1,000 for Oz as we went into the recount. All right. But as I saw this margin today, there was a very significant, if you saw it on Twitter, or if you read my more detailed analysis on locals over the last few days, plus this morning, you would see why everybody should be pretty bullish on Oz at this point. All right. First of all, things don't happen in a vacuum in election projection. If one thing goes one way, one thing goes another, you have to constantly adjust for that. So what we try to do is basically do a range of possibilities. And based on that range of possibilities, this is how likely it is somebody's going to win. All right. What happened on election day was that the statewide, let's just say statewide, the early vote was much better for McCormick than some people thought. And that's because he put money into a ground game. He had a ground game, especially in the more establishment Republican areas. He's going to win some of these conservative counties out and around the conservative T, and then even in the north. And why? Because the vote was split, not because McCormick was incredibly popular with conservative voters in the more conservative Trump, traditionalist, even conservative Republican areas. That's not what happened here. It's not that Oz or Barnette were weak. It's just that Oz and Barnette were fighting for a lot of the same MAGA vote, and McCormick was getting some of the Cruz-like typical conservative and the establishment Republican vote. He did better there. Basically, what we're expecting to see here is this 9-point margin was not going to hold, and it did not. Why? What tipped us off that the late arriving ballots, everyone's waiting on military ballots, blah, 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 blah. What tipped off everybody to that there could be a problem for McCormick to catch up with this vote is that statewide on election night, the ballots that were that were already there, that we got and were ready to be counted, McCormick led by about 9 points, about 9 points. All right. Depends on the area. In the end, as those late arrivers came in, they were tied up. For instance, Erie County is a great example. He had an 18-point lead with the early vote in Erie County. Yet the late arriving ballots that were counted on Wednesday were breaking basically even. A point, if you want to be generous and round up, a point for McCormick. That wasn't going to cut it. In order for McCormick to rely on these ballots that remain outstanding, even before what happened this morning, in order for McCormick to really say, all right, I'm going to be not only within the margin, the striking distance margin, but I could overtake Oz and get outside of that recount. There's a historical margin for a recount to change the leaderboard. All right. And that's about, in this case, with this turnout, it's about 500 votes. That's it. All right. So I looked at the math, and it just got harder and harder as time went on to see, even with the militaries and the provisionals, and there's only about 2,000 provisionals, there were all these big numbers being thrown out there. And what people don't understand is that included Democrat mail-in, and Democrats participate in mail-in more. But so by last night, I'm trying to explain to people there are 9,000 ballots left. That's it. And that included election day vote as well. There is still 700 to 900 election day votes estimated in Philadelphia. There were the biggest batch of election day vote remaining in Allegheny County. What happened this morning is significant, okay? And just to give you guys an idea of what happened, I'll give you the numbers exactly right now. And by the way, Oz just won 2 more. So now that actually increased his lead up from 1,115. Oh, 5. Excuse me, 5 more. All right. 809 votes initially came in out of 21 out of the 31 precincts that remained in Allegheny County election day votes. McCormick had been winning Allegheny big in the mail-in vote, but he was only winning by 6 points in the election day vote that we had at that point. So we expected, all right, if he was going to win by that roughly same margin, how much would that gain him net over Oz? It wasn't that much, but you got to give people a chance. Things can happen. Out of the 809 votes, out of the 21 to 31 precincts, so there were 10 precincts left, and I see some trickling now, Oz beat McCormick. It was a shot. This is why we have to kind of calculate for variances, because sometimes things don't go the way you expect them to go. Like McCormick doing better in some of the early vote. Oz took 316. McCormick took 288. That rose Oz's lead to 1,115. I see another election day vote match that just came in that bumped Oz, netted about 5 votes out of that. So right now, Oz's lead is 1,120 votes. It's going the wrong way for McCormick. It's just going the wrong way. And you try to be fair to people. He's hiring an army of lawyers. Oz retained somebody as well, from what I understand. How could I put this nicely? I understand you spent millions and millions and millions and millions of your own money. But at the end of the day, if you are not within 200 to 400 votes, then you are wasting the taxpayers' money for nothing. I mean, that is the honest assessment. I call balls and strikes with you guys, and I always have. To hold up until midsummer, when the recount can begin next week, to hold up into midsummer is going to damage the Republican nominee. And it's going to do so and cost the taxpayer. Why? Because, folks, you can't raise general election money. Fetterman's going to amass a huge war chest over the next 3 months, while Republicans act like Democrats. If I get you spent a ton of your money, I hear you have it. If you go down like this, you're going to hurt yourself with the Republican base forever. And you're going to hurt the Republican Party. That's a reality. A lot of people went out there and worked for McCormick hard. But if there is not some drastic change here, then the idea that a recount is going to change that kind of margin is not legitimate. It's the BS that a lot of people pushed after 2020 that pumped a lot of people's hopes up. I hear they made a lot of money doing it, but it inevitably did not change the result. So that's where we are. There is also people like, well, Rich, there's still mail-in votes. You're right, there are. And guess what? They're not from great areas for McCormick. McCormick has not been performing. Number one, they were never areas where McCormick's margin was great. And number two, Oz had been performing better with the ballots that were late arriving. They were people who decided last minute. Because what happened is that Oz and McCormick split the late deciders who left Kathy Barnette. After Kathy Barnette kind of buckled under scrutiny, a lot of people were like, oh, no. Hat tip to McCormick's pollster for seeing it. Bad hat tip to Oz's pollster for getting Oz, spooked over the rise of Kathy Barnette. And instead, everybody focused on Kathy Barnette and beating her down when that was the strategy of McCormick all along. McCormick played this super smart. And I'm not going to say any names, but for everybody who jumped on, you know who I'm talking about. For everybody who jumped on the Barnette train when there were obvious, clear issues, it was never Sean Parnell's fault. It was never Gunny Sergeant Duff's fault. It was never my fault that what she said did not match the paperwork. But not good for Team Oz. That's for people to work out. Your job is to make sure you don't take your eye off the prize. And your pollster didn't really notice that Kathy Barnette was kind of always a formidable person in this race. I was talking with a pollster last night. He had been polled. He's like, I don't understand. Did nobody see Kathy Barnette coming? She was at 15% in the Emerson poll. She was at 18% in our poll. Fact is, Team Oz let Sean Hannity and company goose him. And they took the eye off the prize. They took their eye off the ball. And the ball was McCormick. Somebody doesn't have a ground game, it matters. McCormick invested heavily in a ground game. I tell this to candidates all the time. You are not Donald Trump. You are not Donald Trump. You are not going to win an election on Twitter. You're not getting above 25%. You're not going to win an election being a firebrand on Twitter. Elections are won on the fundamentals of the campaign. Ground games, messaging, outreach, inspiration, motivation. If you get that Trump endorsement, that helps you if you don't have a ground game. Once that Trump endorsement went to Oz, you can see it. But people are like, well, it didn't really help Oz like it helped Vance. Yes, it did. The northeast part of the state, the Trumpiest part of the state, where Doug Mastriano actually did the worst because Lou Barlett is from Lackawanna. The Trumpiest part, and when I say Trumpy, I mean the strongest Democratic strongholds. Historically strong Democratic strongholds. Lackawanna, Luzerne, Monroe, Pike. And then out in the west, Greene. Oz barely lost Erie. He almost won Erie, barely lost it. And he was ahead on election night there. And now you can even see in places like Allegheny, where these precincts, they're McCormick's supposed home base, and yet Oz is taking it from him. That development this morning is devastating. You're going to hear all this. What about the military ballots? What about this? What about that? Their hopes were hinging on Allegheny County. Let's cut the crap. And that election day vote, the Trumpy election day vote, is beating McCormick in his home base. So I warned people, yes, it's close. And actually, I expected Oz's lead. Why? Because it was the most likely scenario. You had to account for the fact that Oz wasn't going to perform better in everything. So I expected by Wednesday night, Oz would probably be close to falling within 1,000, under 1,000, his lead. And if McCormick on Wednesday night was within 700 votes, plus or minus 50, 700 votes, then there was a real legitimate chance that not only could he overtake him, but if he outperformed a little bit in Allegheny, then he could probably buffer it, maybe inch ahead of Oz a little bit and buffer. That was always like the 15% or less scenario. 20, I'll be generous, 20% or less. It was 80-20 favorite for Oz from the jump because once Oz started to do better with those mail-in votes, and then once we realized there was still some vote in Philadelphia. That vote in Philadelphia yesterday, election day vote, Oz took that 3-1. He netted almost 80 votes out of a batch of 200. And there's more. Like, well, there's still outside. Luzerne? On Wednesday, when that 2,400 vote batch from Luzerne came in and Oz crushed it, where did people look around the map and say Dave McCormick was going to make that up? Could he have? Still, yeah. In this 21 out of 31 precincts just voted in Allegheny, and it was bad news. He needed to make that up there. And not only did he not make it up, Oz netted votes. Netted it. So the focus on Barnette, all that did was keep this race from being called super early. Or not super early, but much earlier than this. And if for somebody who disagrees with me, I would argue, when was the last time you saw military ballots give somebody a margin of 1,200 votes? We know what's out. So far, over the last 3 days, I've been right every step of the way. But Rich, there's still 30,000 in Lancaster. Or Lancaster. Not Republican ballots, there aren't. There's still 20,000 in Allegheny. Not Republican ballots, there aren't. And somebody had tweeted me and said, this is BS. Allegheny waited until days later to push Oz over. Oz was over. The concern is that Allegheny, and he has no friends there. The concern, that's McCormick country. The concern is Team McCormick was going to do something funny with Allegheny. And there is no excuse, regardless of which way this outcome. This is an abomination to a supposed first world country. Don't give me this crap, these excuses. We count votes just fine in North Carolina. We count votes just fine in Florida. We count votes just fine in Ohio. By the way, in Florida, we dwarf all of you in vote count. Dwarf you. With 3 major population centers. There is no excuse. None. And for the wise you-know-what comments I saw on Twitter, well, I guess Republicans won't worry about this late arriving ballot. No, they do. Republicans don't like any late arriving ballots. And by the way, liberals, only you who delude yourself on Twitter seem to think it's okay. The rest of the country wants a ban on any ballot late arriving. They also want a ban on drop boxes. They want bans on ballot harvesting. You're all alone in this crazy little world of a wacky minority. All right, so, that's where we are. I don't see a path for Dave McCormick. I just don't. It is incredibly narrow once that Allegheny dropped that bomb. And that was a bomb. I had to check when I saw that come in on the JSON, which is a file that feeds the API, vote, share to the map. I'm like, wait, what? I thought it was Philadelphia reporting some remaining precincts election day vote that wasn't counted. I thought it was Philadelphia, and McCormick was like doing better in it because Oz took it 3-1 yesterday. And I'm like, whoa, this is really bad for someone. And unfortunately for McCormick, it's bad for him. It's funny to me. I won't mention this. It's somehow okay for Mitch McConnell to get a team of lawyers and his candidates to get a team of lawyers and contest an election result despite what it does to the party. It's somehow all right for Team McConnell to do it and Team Elise Stefanik to do it. Just not Donald Trump or anyone associated with Donald Trump. Then it's an impeachable offense and puts everything at risk of collapsing. The world will end. Wormwood will come from the sky and obliterate us all. Without a doubt. I like Sean Parnell. I think he legitimately supports. I don't think anything funny going on there. I'm looking at some of those. I just think he supported McCormick. Everyone can make their own, back their own horse. I just think what happened with Barnette was disingenuous. It was not. It was something I have never seen before. And then people wanted us to just turn a blind eye. Now that the election's over, let me tell you what people like Duff and Parnell and I, who are actually veterans, let me tell you what it looked like to us when we looked at that very poorly kept DD214, which is gold to a veteran. You don't lose your DD214 and you don't destroy your DD214. Laura and I, when I got out of the Army, went through hell. Hell. I had a very hard time reassimilating, even though I was largely educated. I didn't know, right, Laura? I mean, let's get real. Let's have some personal talk for a second. I did not want to be back in the civilian world. I missed my battles. I thought that civilian friendship was useless compared to real companionship. I had survivor's guilt, terrible. I just wanted to go back with my friends.
And I quote, "You do not feel alive unless there's bullets flying past your head."
Exactly. And I didn't want to go back to the very boring civilian world. I had a difficult time until I snapped it. Well, until Laura, God be praised for it. I had a loving wife who was incredibly supportive. And honestly, and a great father. He deserves credit too. But I still didn't trash my DD214. My point is, you still know as a veteran, maybe you want to get a job and claim preferred veteran status. Maybe you need it for VA and healthcare coverage, okay? You don't lose your DD214. You don't not know where it is. You don't let it get in a condition that looks like it's been photocopied 50 times. And when Don comes on, I'm going to put him in the very uncomfortable position of explaining what he thought as well. I've never seen a DD214 with 2 X's on it in the same box. I've never seen one with such crummy alignment. And I have never seen one where the gray shaded areas are gone. And why does this matter? Because if you were trying to use it for a job, to get a job, right? Or if you were to get hired somewhere, or if you were trying to use it to claim preferred veteran status in order to get a job, that DD214 that she handed in would not suffice, that she put forward. That would not work. It would not, it's not in good enough shape. It's not legible enough to be considered a valid document. And it says, frankly, in the corner of the paper, and that any questionable marks in shaded boxes render this void. The shaded was gone. Forget about box 22 and 24. The shaded areas were gone. That is not kosher dill. That's a red flag to anybody who's ever looked at one before. Sorry. And people who I know and respect just wanted us to turn our heads to it. Just turn a blind eye. If it was just like, maybe a photocopy version of it and, it's still legit, then that's fine. But when you have multiple things that are questionable, well, why doesn't this add up with claims made? That looks like a DD214 that somebody had after being dismissed from basic training. That's what it looks like. Now, it's possible. It's not. Something else went on there. But that is an involuntary discharge code. And we were just supposed to forget about it. All right. So, very disappointing in some people's behavior. Very, especially insinuating that I'm giving that scrutiny because what? I'm racist? Because she was a black woman? That's the only reason why I had a problem with her DD214? Very, very disappointing. And I know that was directed at me. I know it was. Or I think it was directed largely at the three of us. Shame on you. Shame on you. And by the way, you didn't help her. You helped Dave McCormick. That's who you were helping. All right, let's see. Let me just check for another update once I do this. Okay, so that means if that's about that, then look, folks, we're probably in the ballpark now of like 6,000 and change remaining ballots. Maybe 7. And where do we get those estimates? That's based on how much the state noses out, and the State Department did an incredible job out there. They really have been. Like, look, in Crawford, Dave McCormick has a slight edge in Crawford, still 31-29, but he only does because that was his early vote, built-in early vote lead. In the late arriving mail-in ballots, Oz did better, and now Oz is, very close. There's not enough left to catch him in Crawford, but there is enough to tighten it. There's some in Mercer. And again, if Oz, now there is enough left. It is possible he catches him in Mercer. And then there is, again, chunks in, they did not add the rest of that in Philadelphia. So technically, let's say Oz wins that last batch by as much as he did yesterday. He could net over, over 200 votes. Just in a few hundred votes in Philadelphia. There has to be a major tabulation error, but Emperor Soft Turtle, I think, puts it best. This is just embarrassing, and it's at the point where it doesn't matter if anything is going on. Elections and faith in elections is so important that you conduct yourself competently and transparently, because it's a lot like why we have a system of recusals in the legal system, right? In the judicial system. Why do you recuse yourself? Is it really because the judge is not capable of putting their bias aside? Is that really what it is? Or is it because the mere appearance of impropriety is enough to damage the integrity of the system? This is a freaking disgrace. And there was no reason for some of this stuff. Just no reason. I don't know if you know our email, Gaylord, but if you do, I'll send you the original one that was tweeted out. I see your comment, because that's another thing. The original one that was tweeted out was deleted. And then there was another one that was tweeted. Again, 13 minutes later. I don't know why she did that. I don't know. But I grabbed both of them because I had a feeling, again, that first initial one used incorrect terminology. I just don't know that many military people who use so much incorrect terminology. It's so important to us. Acronyms. I mean, everybody knows what these things stand. And those are always red flags to guys like me. Like, wait a minute. And it wasn't some campaign aids era, because I found the same language verbatim on her Amazon author page. They copied and pasted. Did she have an aide when she put up her Amazon author page? I mean, folks, look, it all smells like to me. And I've been doing this for a long time. Something was seriously wrong there. Very seriously. And you're going to find out, by the way. I mean, it's going to happen eventually. Someone's going to put a FOIA in. Someone's going to put a FOIA in. We're going to find out what the 214 from 1998 says. But in any event, I do just want to point out that I told you there was a ceiling there, and that I really did not think this was ever a 3-person race. I thought this was a 2-person race. And it's not because of the money they spent, because of the campaigns they ran. Because one person had a serious, Yes, like assault rifle 15, Richard. Exactly. 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 People who know what they're talking about, people who are in the culture, don't make mistakes like this. Doug Mastriano ran away with it. And I want to point out that for all of the people who said, before I go to Mastriano, +5 in the Q poll, which I'm a little bit hesitant of. But listen, I tell people this all the time. Well, Doug can't win. And Don's going to come on and Don will tell you he's interviewed Doug Mastriano before. If he pivots and he stays focused and doesn't let Shapiro distract him, I do think he can win. I just don't think he could have won with Barnette also on the ticket. I don't. Sorry. Why? Because there's the difference between electable and viable. Doug Mastriano has never been caught in something that questioned his viability. Electability, yes, and that's debatable, but not viability. And by the time the election rolls around, gas prices, food shortages, they're not going away. Pennsylvania, the Keystone Pipeline, election integrity issues such as what we are watching unfold in front of our face right now. I think people who think Roe v. Wade is going to somehow change that dynamic are smoking crack and are like living in their own headspace, their own bubble. And I will give it to honestly, I will give it to some people, that are Democratic pollsters that are willing to at least admit to Politico and other outlets, it's not going to work. It's a problem. And the reason why you see the prognosticating and pontificating of the cubicle cornballs, all right, like, you know how I hate even saying the name, but both names, is because they don't live in the real world. They live with those other fanatics in the world they've constructed that consists of their cubicle at the New York Times. They don't live with the rest of us. They're incapable. Honestly, they shouldn't even be people who claim to know how to predict behavior, human behavior at all, because as I've said, the prediction of elections, the art of public polling, it is essentially a social science more than any other science. Even the use of math, even the use of sociology, it's essentially a social science, even a behavioral science, where you're trying to predict the behavior, the actions of other human beings. You cannot hope to do that with any degree of competency or accuracy if you, don't understand those other human beings. You can't put yourself in their shoes and see the world as they see it through their eyes, not yours. If you can't empathize with them, then you can't understand them. If you can't understand them, then you will never be able to predict their behavior. And definitely, you can't do it with any degree of competency or accuracy if you secretly, or not so secretly, dislike them. Let's be honest. If you look down on them, and they do, and that is why they consistently find themselves gyrating back and forth, working on one stupid theory that will never play out in the real world. And when it looks like you're wrong, you pick up the leash to Fifi your poodle instead of listening to the voice of reason. You take a tantrum on Twitter and you say, I'm going to take Fifi for a walk. By the way, when you come back, Trump will have a 3-point lead in Florida. Maybe Roe will change the dynamic. My God. My God. All right, let me just take another look here, and it may update before Don comes on, but we'll see. All right, with that in mind, she was a Christine O'Donnell, Will. Absolutely, she was. I'm not a witch. I'm just like you. I didn't fudge my DD214. I'm just like you. Okay? Yes, but your cat's name is Fifi. All right? And a cat is a cat is a cat. When you have a pink poodle named Fifi, then you may have a problem. Okay? I'll tell you what this time, because I'm getting ready to gear up to open up the public polling project here and talk about this. This time, I think I really want to add a lot more peer-to-peer. I do. I mean, we have I just have to exclude, make sure we don't have any other panelists, people who have taken the online survey before. I exclude them month after month. So I don't care if we wind up interviewing somebody 2 months, 3 months from now who we had interviewed prior. I don't mind that. What I don't want to do is re-interview somebody that we just interviewed last month. So I put on this filter that excludes people that conducted the survey last month. We had the first public hearing on UFO since 1970 this week. So I definitely did put that on there. The government, censorship, and free speech section I am keeping on, as I am keeping on the abortion section. And here is why. You did not stop anything. You did not stop them from establishing a disinformation bureau. They will be back. We shall keep this on because they will be back. They will never give up on an idea like that. And for people who don't understand the nature of leftism, just trust me on this when I tell you. They absolutely will. All right. So their czar was put on the shelf, but I have no doubt within 6 to 12 months, the idea for a disinformation bureau, which is the Disinformation Governance Board to monitor disinformation, will return. So do you support or oppose the creation or establishment of, and then also we'll ask whether or not you think it's the government's role in a free society to police misinformation. Ooh, do you want me to give him a message for you? Ah, I see that, Scott. Not really. He's a disgrace. He's a complete disgrace. I remember when he was a voice of reason from CNN to Fox News. Obviously was a Democrat. You could tell he was a Democrat. But like a Kennedy Democrat he came across as. In the end, he turned out to be just another fanatic who's willing to sell his so-called political analysis to remain relevant, and Orange Man bad. Orange Man bad. Really. He is one of the biggest disappointments for me personally. Obviously, as a generation that came before mine, anyone who had any interest in college of learning how to project elections, whether it was statistically or he was always very different. It's funny he's so aligned with all the rest of those frauds now, because he used to argue years ago, 20 years ago, right? 25 even. He used to argue there is no statistical way to say so-and-so has 75% chance of winning this election. He used to say it doesn't work like that. It's not legitimate, nor is it credible. It's voodoo. statistics, basically. And it's misleading and people shouldn't do it. Now look. Yeah, Trump unmasked him, man. That's right, Judo. Trump just unmasked him and everybody else. Chris Wallace, you are not your daddy. And Larry doesn't have a crystal ball. If he does, then Larry's crystal balls are so small that it's getting blurry in there and he really can't see what's going on. Because he hasn't called right in years. Teeny tiny little you know what's. Ugh. Teeny tiny, him and his teeny tiny crystal balls. Getting kind of cloudy over the years, I guess, Larry. Getting kind of cloudy. Maybe want to spit on him, clean him up a little bit. You know what's up. Oh, should just move on, man. You should just move on. Even Guy Benson, I heard once say, what a terror. Or was it Guy Benson or was it Britt Hume? I don't know. I don't know why, but the two of them remind me of each other. One's young, one's not. I get it, but two of them kind of remind me of each other. I think it was Britt. It's like, what happened to that guy? What happened to that guy? My answer to you is, honestly, I don't think that anything happened to him. I think that's what he was. He was just, they're all really good at being full of crap. And like, what's his name said before in the comment, Trump just changed it. Right, there's always a disinformation board. All right, 1252. So we got that. The pro-life. Recently, a leaked draft opinion appearing in news reports suggested the U.S. Supreme Court is preparing to overturn Roe v. Wade. The leak was the first ever in the history of the court. Which do you believe will likely happen if Roe v. Wade is overturned? Abortion will be criminalized under all circumstances. Abortion will be legal only under some circumstances. States will decide whether to place restrictions on abortion. I can't wait to see the answer to that. And then, of course, we have the typical. I see Robert Cahaley ask something just like we did, and notice how many people said once the heart is beating, I'm out. Including people who say they're pro-choice. Once there's something about that. There's something about people hearing or like acknowledging there's a heartbeat now. Laura, telling you, there's something about that. That when they hear, there's a baby's heart beating, they don't even care how many weeks it is at this point. Like, I know it's very early in the pregnancy. They just feel like that heart is beating, and then that's a wrap. Where's the little one?
My laptop died.
Oh, your laptop died? I was wondering what happened to you. I'm over here like...
Sneaking on in.
By the way, we got to find that neon sign.
Oh, on there?
Yeah.
What's in that?
I got this cool little neon sign that, like, when we moved, we packed, and I never was able to find it. I'd have to go through. We're gonna have to go through, but it's cool. It's when I'm on the air and it flashes and lights up. But it's cute. It's like, but it tells everybody too, leave me alone, stay quiet, But I like it. It's like one of the. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like really Americana. Like, I like old school Pepsi Cola signs. Like, I like the old school gas pumps that cost like $5,000 to refurbish. I'm super Americana. I love stuff like that. I do. And
I love those 5 cents Pepsi signs.
5-cent Pepsi. My dad did that to me. Us.
Yeah, I pretty much.
You guys ever see the show American Pickers?
I love that show.
My dad was like the OG American Picker. He loved it. Not other people's crap. He just knew one day that stuff was going to be worth money. And even though he didn't do it as much as he would have liked, of course, working man, definitely gave me an appreciation for it. Definitely. Yeah. Ooh, Jay, what? There's a barn close to my house that has the old school Coca-Cola sign on it. Jay, you know what's funny? I've been offered ridiculous amounts of money for some of this stuff. I once picked, well, I didn't pick it. I mean, I guess you could call it picking because it's like you ferret out, you see things for sale. I found an old school plastic mold Halloween decoration that is like from the I don't know 50s, 60s. I don't even know. And someone offered me an ungodly amount of money for it, even though the old school light is like definitely not up to code. It had an old school bulb in it, like a really cardboard filament. I don't know, but like American Restoration, right? And somebody had seen it. A woman had seen it. She collects them. She offered me a ridiculous amount of money for it. And stuff like Coca-Cola signs and stuff, that they'll it's crazy. It's just crazy. Anybody have any idea why iTunes just opens on its own on music? Anybody ever see that happen before? Yeah, probably asbestos shooting everywhere. You're probably right. But this is plastic. It's one of those molds, those like plastic molds, and they had them even still in the 80s, when I was a kid. The old Santas with the red circle cheeks. Total Americana. All right. And I love that stuff. Also, we'll be asking a lot about different presidential candidates because look at the AP poll, by the way. You have only 39%. It's a record low for Joe Biden. If a Democrat is at 39%, they're in deep trouble because, as you all know, the AP is a garbage poll that overstates Democrat support. I'm sorry. You are not the gold standard in news, let alone in polling. The panel itself, I'm not a fan of the panel they use. Especially as if they didn't do bad enough in 2016, Hillary Clinton plus 14, God save you. In 2020, they we did such a great job and we fixed it. Biden plus 12. All of these people, signed up for these crappy panels, these Zoomers, these professional class Trump and Republican haters. Orange man bad. Orange man bad. In a poll like that, I'm not sure he can go much lower than 39% in the AP poll because they're never going to weight it correctly, Alexis. They're never going to. Look, 5% support among Republicans, and I think it was abysmal among Democrats. They had 2 in 10 who said that the country was headed in the right direction, nearly 70 who said the country was not headed in the right direction. And Gaylord, you're probably right. I think it's probably just checking for updates. So some of these polls are like designed that they will never have Trump high. They'll never have Biden too low. And because Democrats would wholesale have to abandon him in order for it to work. And I really just don't think they're ever going to do that. Now, some of them have revamped their methodology, like Quinnipiac, and I credit them for it. They even went to vendors I know and I trust and asked, help us out. So I credit them for it. And look where Biden is there, right? However, people say, well, why is the generic ballot the way it is? I showed you this when we first started the public polling project. Who would you rather control Congress is not a generic ballot. It's not a vote intention. And I showed this to you in our very first public polling project that we asked about generic ballot. I said, watch this. I will show you who do you prefer to control Congress, and then also who do you intend to vote for in your congressional district. And there's a disparity, and there always is, sometimes bigger than others. In 2014, we used who do you want to control Congress to give us an idea about so many people who are undecided on the generic ballot, where we thought they would inevitably go. So some of these people include, I think it's Monmouth does it too. That's not how you ask a generic ballot question. So if you're going to trash Rasmussen for how they worded theirs in 18, which got them in trouble, made them people think that the Senate was also being asked, then you have to criticize people for asking the generic ballot like that. That is not a legitimate generic ballot. And who do you want to control is different than who are you going to vote for. That's just the truth. When we come back, we'll bring in my good friend Don. We'll get some of the things. I definitely want his take on some of this stuff. And I also want to talk a little bit about what happened, how big of a deal North Carolina was. And it's not getting any of the headlines, unfortunately, because of what's going on in Pennsylvania. It's a huge deal, and I'll explain why. All right, but enough of my ranting. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. On that break, go subscribe to peoplespundit.locals.com. Subscribe to Rumble while you're there on Rumble. The Locals button is here. It's below. Check it out. I'm sure you'll. We have had this week tremendous growth. I really pray we keep it up because I'm dying to do some great election coverage on our own terms. All right, we'll be back in 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Yes, special thanks to Bowen for the theme song, Bad Habit. As always, I got to remember to bring that up. But I cut it short because I want to get right back into it. There's just a lot to talk about. I'm going to bring on my good friend now, Don Smith of the Don Smith Show. You guys, you know him, you love him. Don, exciting week, my friend. Very exciting week. A lot going on. First and foremost, amazing interview with Rebecca Clayfish. And the part that you released was really cool that you did that because people got to see like who she is. I'm telling you, the woman's the real deal. She's a rock. Look, there's been no secret. I'm a big, major fan of Rebecca Clayfish and always have been. I'm not even going to make a secret out of it because being someone's number two when you're going through what Scott Walker went through is a big deal. And to be as solid as she was, and what always just struck me about her, years ago, she probably doesn't even remember it, bumped into her. She's just a real person, just as like a totally real person, which so many of these fakes are not. I get very disenfranchised. Some of these people really piss me off. Even people that I know, one party or the other, the base loves them to death, and I know they're a fraud, and it makes me bitter. But somebody like a Rebecca Clayfish comes along and she's just a breath of fresh air. She's like, I don't know if I should say this, probably get me in trouble, but she's like, let me just put it this way. She's salt of the earth Midwest. Salt of the earth Midwest. I'll end it there. So good. Yeah. Great job on that interview. First and foremost. What do you think about this prospect that McCormick's going to hire a team of lawyers and contest this thing? Can you explain for people who don't understand why holding up, if it is some miraculous thing happens and he gets within 500 votes of Oz, a recount could potentially change the result. At this point, you need a major tabulation error because losing Allegheny this morning was a disaster for them. There's no other way to point this. They were counting on that vote in Allegheny to break harder for them and get them close so that when the recount happened, maybe they could strike a few ballots here, strike a few, because understand what they're trying to do, folks. McCormick with his team of lawyers, if they're really going to go this route, is they're going to try to get some votes uncounted. Mm-hmm. That's the only option he has here. All right. So you're talking about an attempt to disenfranchise potentially a vote. There, potentially. And then you don't have a nominee until the summer. How are they going to raise money against Fetterman? How are you going to? Because people have to understand, Don, you can't until it's all done and settled. Fetterman will have this massive war chest, and whoever it is, Oz or McCormick, is going to get beat. Plus, they'll have already defined, as you know, as a messaging guy, this is how Bush beat Kerry. He defined him. He ran out real early and defined him because Kerry had to deal with nominations and he didn't get up on the airways fast enough. By that time, Bush had already defined him as someone who embellishes his military career, uses military career, and by the way, he's a New England liberal. That is what he did, and it killed him in Iowa and Ohio.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. It's the process, right? This is the whole problem with all this.
Sucks. Yeah.
But I think there's another thing here too, that a lot of people were looking to see if our elections were going to be better, right? Because there's a lot of questions about what happened in 2020. You and I talked about the whole pandemic thing and all the things that passed and changed the way we do things to make it less reliable, less accountable, right? I mean, that's really the bottom line here. So I think a lot of people were really looking at Pennsylvania and the others, but I think especially in Pennsylvania to see if we've cleaned this stuff up, if we fixed anything. And it's pretty apparent we haven't. I mean, we are, we're still counting votes, and how long is this going to go on? Until next week, they're going to probably come up with something. And this whole thing is just an absolute mess. But exactly to the point you're making, is this encumbers whoever is going to be that nominee on both the fundraising side of it, the support side of it. It looks bad. It just stinks. The whole thing stinks.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's like I've been using this as an example. It's not even whether or not something's wrong. It's the same reason why a judge recuses himself or a prosecutor recuses. It's the appearance of impropriety that threatens the integrity of the system itself. And honestly, there is no reason why Allegheny could not count those votes. What the hell were they doing? We all know what they were doing. They were hoping the margin from the mail-in vote would get McCormick within striking distance, and then they were going to, come on, can we get real? Come on. That is what they were doing. And I actually had somebody today on Twitter say, Allegheny held back for Oz, and no, Oz outperformed. Allegheny is enemy territory for Oz. That's McCormick's backyard. And, so I just don't, this is bad for the country. It's bad for the party. No one has ever come back, had a recount change that many votes. Al Franken is the biggest example. Do you want that, ladies and gentlemen? Al Franken's people were finding votes in trunks of people's cars. That is what was going on. It was totally illegitimate, and everybody knows it. All right. I mean, or at least, whether it was illegitimate or not, nobody's going to go and investigate. But I'm saying it looked terrible. Norm just sat there and took it. Nobody's ever, it hurts faith in the system. And I just find that to be dangerous. Why? Because things that destroy empires and societies, Don, among the list are untrusted elections. People who don't have faith in their government because of maybe their elections or how they get selected, they don't view as legitimate. Food shortages, high energy costs, unaffordable housing. You guys notice a pattern here? This is the stuff that destroys empire. This is the stuff that takes down regimes. What the hell are we doing? I feel like these people aren't going to be happy until we're like killing each other. Don?
Yeah.
By the way, another few votes just came in. They were dead even. So Oz, the first batch, Oz won. The second batch, Oz netted 2 votes. He won it. And now this last batch was even. And so Oz is now at 418,167. McCormick's at 417,047. And by the way, that's without the election day from Philly, which Oz won 3-1 yesterday. I just don't see I don't, like, what are you doing? I understand you spent $25 million. I get that. But you're not going to pay for the recount. You're already going to do that. The trailing candidate can decline the recount. They can. And I understand it hurts. You've lost elections by a few hundred votes. I've lost elections by a few hundred. It burns. It sucks. It stings. But in the end of the day, you have to look at your realistic, have to look at it realistically and say, do I really have a viable path here or not?
Yeah, when you talk about disenfranchising, I think that the key to that is this is a voter suppression kind of thing when people get disenfranchised, but it's a voter enthusiasm. So even if you're not totally disenfranchised and you're still going to go vote, you're doing it kind of holding your nose and you're not excited about it. And that's the real, I think, victim in this whole thing is the Pennsylvania voter. We've already got Kathy Barnette saying she's not going to support whoever wins. And so that's going to continue on. And this whole thing is a mess.
I expected that from her. I did, because that's the kind of person. Now that the race is over, Don, I started earlier in the show, and I have no problems now. Outwardly, Scott, I don't like to influence votes, but that DD214 was a joke. That was a joke.
Yeah,
it was a complete mess. It's not our fault. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. It's not Sean Parnell's fault. It's not, Gunny Sergeant Duff's fault. That was on her, man.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, okay. So yeah, you and I spent some time. I mean, this is, I guess, after my show on Saturday when you got some documentation, because we promised everybody we would vet this, the whole situation. And we did. We both did our own independent, and then we got together and even discussed some of it. One of those aspects was the DD214. I've never seen a DD214 like that. People can say what they want about the government and especially the military, but they do things to a certain standard, and you get fired. You get in trouble if you don't do it to a certain standard. It's not like a typical job where they just they say don't do that again because this looks like hell. I've never seen a government document, and at least I was in the Navy. I never saw a Navy document that looked anything like that. Nothing was lined up. There were double X's in places where it's like, how did that happen? It was just a very, very questionable document. There were, you mentioned some of the specific boxes in there, but there was also the one where there was no leave accrued. To me, it looked like a document of somebody that didn't even complete boot camp.
That's what it looked like to Sean Parnell too, and that's what it looked like to Duffy too. I mean, that's it.
So I'm not saying that she doctored it, or I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just telling people that's not how a DD214 looks. I've never seen one like that. I've never seen duplications of things outside of boxes. Everything was outside the box. Nothing matched up. This was I don't know. I would have never released that. If I were her communications person, I would have said, do not release this, because I would have told her, and I would have told her exactly why, because here's what I see. So anybody else looking at it objectively, and I was not like you, I'm not anti-Barnette by any stretch of the imagination. I may have still gone to the polls. I would have been flipping the coin between definitely Oz, no, but I'd have been flipping a coin a little bit. I probably would have went McCormick, but I didn't want to say any of those things back then because I didn't want to influence anything, and I just felt bad for the people that had to go. And
I liked Carla Sands. I mean, she just didn't have polling numbers, so it would have been like, do I want to vote and throw away a vote? Like, I told you, and you and I had personal conversations about this. Like, I felt bad for the voters of Pennsylvania. I did. Well, I felt bad for them.
And let's be clear about this. We would not have been at that position had it not been for the Sean Parnell thing. There is no Dr. Oz.
We would have won it.
Sean Parnell would have run away with that thing. I don't think it would have even been close. And then, we all saw what happened there. So it is what it is, but that's what started this whole mess. Right. And then it's just been an S show, I guess, ever since. So.
Yeah, I guess, I was talking to somebody the other day about how that even happened with Sean Parnell, and I wasn't aware of some of it was Jeff Bartos. I wasn't aware of his role in doing that. I am very uncomfortable with using family court allegations to derail someone's campaign. And I got to be honest, Sean knew he was going to win that thing going away. He could have hung in there. But as a father, I don't know that I would have wanted to subject my children to that either. And I got to give him a hat tip, man. It's a lot. To walk away from something you're putting your heart and soul in like that, especially when you're the favorite. You have Parnell locked it all up. He had the Trump vote. He had the traditional Cruz vote. He had it all locked up. This would have been, and Bartos apparently was behind that. And I actually didn't know that, so shame on you. If that's true, shame on you, Jeff Bartos. Shame on you. Because now but that's the Karl Rove maneuver, man. Nothing's off limits. Nothing. Getting someone's ex-wife to lie about abusing your children. Now they use that against 2 candidates now. 2 Trump candidates they've used that against. That's horrible. Don, that's a line for me, man. That is a line. For people who have no experience in family or divorce court, spouses, in custody battles for kids, they say the most egregious, fake, awful things about their, because there's no, unlike when you bear false testimony in a criminal, trial, there's no real penalty. There's just not. I mean, you get away with it. It's just horrible. What do you think? I got to ask you about Cawthorn too. What are your thoughts on Madison Cawthorn?
Yeah, I mean, he's self-destructed. He's self-destructed, and I was, I like him. He seems like a good guy and somebody you'd like to, maybe hang out with a bit. But when I saw the video, I mean, that was like, I know he was just goofing around and all those kind of things, but it's disturbing for somebody who's going to be a representative of, of a population. I don't know. I think he's self-destructed. I think kind of did it on his own with help from others. So this also smacks a little bit like something that Karl Rove would. You got to understand, all these guys got Kevin McCarthy, right? And they don't want him to lose that power. I'm talking the Roves and all those kind of people. So there were a lot of forces, I think, at work when it comes to Madison Cawthorn, but I also think he didn't help his case any either. So the question people should really ask is, how did that video get out? Right. So this was a video taken by, I guess, a friend or whatever. So how does somebody get their hands on that thing and get it out there? Because doesn't sound like any of them internally put that out there. So politics is a dirty business. I mean, it just is. And we're seeing some of that. You're always going to see it closer to the election time, right? Between now and the actual general election for the midterms, you're going to see stuff that we're all going to be going, wow, I never saw that before. And that's just the way it is. It's a dirty game.
Yeah, I think too that somebody like you said that get out there. I mean that reeks of a Karl Rove $5,000 incentive. That stinks of that. He is the dirtiest of the dirty. Guy's just a scumbag. And that was one of the questions. Another one was, did she ever get back to you? By she, Barnette. I guess that I'll interview with anyone Twitter thing was BS. Yeah, I mean, did you ever hear back from Kathy Barnette for the interview?
No, as soon as everything broke on that Wednesday, I think it was last Wednesday, as soon as everything broke, that was it. It went dark.
I'm going to just tell you guys, flat, point blank. She went dark with Dawn, and, that would be somebody who would be fair to her. In the closing days, I was thinking she may have heard, Mastriano, because the two were basically attached at the hip. But Mastriano has no problems answering questions from people. And she was like closing down events. Like she was keeping people out. And then at the end of the event, she was being, whooshed out. Like she was, had a Secret Service detail. From Saturday on, she was running away. And there were people at CBS. And I know you guys, you guys hate mainstream media. I know that. But they had legitimate questions about that DD214. Don and I were not the only ones looking at that thing going, what the hell is this supposed to be? Not to mention, the Army released a statement saying it was Guard from 93 to 98, Reserve 98 to 2000. So that didn't even make any sense with that timeline. And why did that raise eyebrows? Because, Don, if, as we suspect, it was something with basic training, you have to wait 2 years roughly to get back in and get another shot. So if it was something that wasn't completely disqualifying, but as the code suggested, involuntary, you could get a waiver 2 years later and get in, but you got to wait 24 months. So it looks to me like something happened, and then there was that waiver period, and then she went into the Guard. That's what it looks like to me. And other people had questions that they wanted to ask, and To answer your question, Fallout Zone, no. That campaign was trying to run out the clock. They were trying to basically play hide and seek until it was time to cast votes. That's what they were doing. And that is not the way you're going to get through a general election, right, Don? Don, Fetterman had a freaking stroke. Do you think the media is going to let the Republican nominee talk about Fetterman's stroke and his condition? No. It's going to be all about the tweets. It's going to be all about the DD214. It's going to be all about the misrepresentations, the embellishments. That's what it's going to be about. They are going, when you have a candidate, think about Biden, Don. Look how damaged he was. Look what they did. They let him hide in his basement while it was constant lies. The Hunter Biden laptop is misinformation, Russian disinformation. Sorry. I mean, they already had a playbook on how to deal with someone like Fetterman. And it was obvious how that candidate, Kathy Barnette, was like their perfect candidate for that playbook. End of story. That was a great question, though. How do you think the race would have shaken out without Barnette in it? That's a really good question, Matthew. Mm-hmm. What do you think? As far as, let's say Kathy Barnette wasn't in there playing 24.6% spoiler. I look at some of these counties, and I see McCormick was not really that strong in traditional conservative Pennsylvania areas. And Oz on election day was catching up. Kathy Barnette was holding him back. Like, take Mercer County. Oz did very poorly in the early vote there. He's like 200 votes away from McCormick now. McCormick carried it or is carrying it. There's still a vote in Mercer. But every election day vote that was counted, Oz was gaining. The problem is Barnette was taking that election day vote too. So I have to say she hurt Oz. I mean, that's my point of view. Right? She hurt Oz, right? Yeah. That you would agree?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line was, okay, so the rise of Kathy Barnette, in part due to the expectations for her from the debate weren't big because she wasn't a well-known factor in any of this at that point. So I think she outperformed what the expectations were, but also it was the Donald Trump endorsement, right? So once that went to Oz, there were people that just couldn't accept Oz, and they weren't. So she became the kind of almost the de facto for some of those people. So they still, they're still with Trump, but they just didn't like that pick. They questioned that pick. There's a lot of people that did that. So without a doubt, she hurt Oz more than anything. Oz runs away with it without her making that rise. And if people were accepting of it, her as the candidate, or I'm sorry, him as the candidate. I think you're muted, Rich.
I'm mute. Thank you, Don. I did mute to blow my nose while you were talking. Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to try to pull up the map to show people, to give them an idea. But sometimes this map when we're also streaming, it doesn't like it, which is why I'm going back to Wirecast eventually. I did on the local streams, people saw, and it seemed to work out all right. But I don't want to just come off the top with it. I want to test it first. Otherwise, I would have done it today. But look, Oz actually won the Trumpiest counties. By that, I mean the counties that were Democratic strongholds. So the central thesis that Oz could not win the Obama Trump voter is wrong. So the question, the people who had a hard time accepting Oz and still voted for Barnette were actually more rural, traditional Republican conservatives, like the Ted Cruz wing of the party. They were the ones who had more trouble if they didn't go with McCormick, because Cruz endorsed McCormick, which is, again, some of Cruz's endorsements. Methinks Ted Cruz may be in the Senate too long. Let me put it that way. All right. But here, look. Greene County, where Robert and I made a big deal because polling from the New York Times showed that Biden was going to take Greene County back. Greene County had voted 2/3 almost for Donald Trump, basically over Hillary Clinton. It was a major, major realignment. And yet somehow, they projected Biden would win that. He did not. Trump crushed Biden there. Fayette next to it. Look at Oz's election day vote, really pulled ahead, 38.5%. Then the other Trumpy areas are even parts of Bucks, even though he lost it twice. He held that. Once Oz took Bucks and really took it, heavily, that was a bad sign for McCormick, because already Luzerne came in. Oz is above 40 in Luzerne. The early vote, he won, even though McCormick did better in early vote. He still won it with like mid-30s to 38, depending on the precincts in Luzerne. But then that election day vote put him over. This was one of the most important counties in 2016 because this was the county that was showing big movement to Donald Trump. In Monroe, over, Oz won that. Carbon County, Oz won it. He held it. Lackawanna, huge, 43%, all the way up to Pike. Or Wayne really is even further north. These are the Trumpiest. I call them the Trumpiest because that's where Trump did the most damage to Democrats. If you look at the Bush v. Gore map and the Kerry v. Gore maps, you will see that those were ancestral Republican areas. Republicans used to win Berks County, Chester County. Democrats win all these now. It used to be Philadelphia. That was for Democrats. And then Western Pennsylvania, Southwestern, Democrats still. And then Northeastern, Democrats. Erie County, Democrats. And that's it. That's it. The rest of it, Trump mutilated that map. He turned it all upside down. So McCormick, point I'm making too is like, look here. This would have been much better vote for Oz without Kathy Barnette on the ticket. She carried Potter. Juniata County went to McCormick, super conservative, because Kathy Barnette did better on election day than Oz. Huntington, right? Same across the board. Areas where Kathy Barnette did really good, even carried some of them, those would have been Oz counties. End of story. So that's a great question though. Can you put a PDF file on how to properly change your voter registration and remove the old one from your previous address? That's a really good question. And yes, I will absolutely put that up on Locals. Are you Locals or YouTube? You're YouTube. Okay. Yes. And by that, Michael Can, I guess, Michael Can, I guess you mean you moved out of state? You went to a different state? Is that what I'm assuming? Because you removed the old one from the previous address. I'll do both. How about that? In-state and out-of-state. Because you will have to call, like, let's say you leave Florida and you move to North Carolina. You will have to call the supervisor of elections in Florida in your prior county, and you will have to say, get me off the voter rolls. That's a really good question, though. Really good. Were you able to track this race from precinct level data? Have there been any elections besides 2020, the general, where this was not provided? Wolf and Shapiro not only allowed this week-long travesty to occur, they actively encouraged days of counting in 2020. What does it say about our time that we can't count on fairly conducted elections if a certain political party is in charge? This is the thing with Shapiro that I actually have always said, Don and I have both said, that I think that Mastriano is unelectable argument was overblown, because he could easily turn some of Shapiro's statements around. Shapiro is the figure who said, don't worry, we will find enough votes in Allegheny County for Joe Biden. He literally said that. All right. So I never believed the Q stuff is the only thing that I always thought was a red flag for Mastriano. That would be a problem. I would tell him if I was advising him, be disciplined, stick on your message. And I don't think, especially now that it's not going to be Barnette at the Senate level, I don't think it is a assured defeat for Mastriano. Like people say, Cook Political Report moved it from toss-up to leans Democrat because Mastriano won. That is some corny BS. First of all, it was leans Republican. And if you're going to move it to toss-up. That's the way. So that's already how their bias is baked in. And I want to bring up more about how biased Cook is and how you can't trust them, why they were so bad last time. They are not able to see beyond their own biases. It's that simple. Don, you've interviewed Doug Mastriano, and I'd like you to speak to this. You know how he is retail and how I want to get your take on it.
Well, okay, yeah. So this was all baked into the cake, right? And you've got to understand this. Once the Trump endorsement came in for Mastriano, the knives were already out for him. They knew he was going to win, and so they were already setting the stage for all that stuff. Once he got that, though, now you've got the McConnells and the other people, the Roves and all these people that are always going to position themselves against Trump. So if that means taking down one of their own, they really don't care. They really don't care. I'm going to play something on my show tomorrow that'll show you. It's about Lindsey Graham and some of the things he got caught on a hot mic that I haven't heard anybody playing. But these people really don't care. This is about their power. This is about their structure, right? So anybody else that comes in, Doug Mastriano would be a threat to that, to their existence, to their swamp, to their, whatever label you want to put on it. That's what he is. So the guy is a very personable guy. He speaks with conviction. He answers hard questions. I'll give you an example. This happened actually off camera because we spent time with him before, time after. The reason I played the Rebecca Clayfish thing from last week for everybody to see, you can get a sense of people even better. It's one thing to interview them and ask them the questions, get the answers. You do the interaction. What are they like before? Then what are they like after? Did they just plug out and they're gone and you were just a period of time for them that was on their schedule? Or are they really genuine people that want to converse with you? So that's why I wanted to play that, just to give everybody. Doug Mastriano was that kind of guy too, both he and his wife. Spoke with conviction, but I asked him a hard question because there was something he had voted on during the pandemic as part of the state legislature. And he voted on Act 77, I believe it was called. And it was allowing more mail-in voting. You got to remember, Pennsylvania was a state that was really locked down. I mean, they were like New York, California, pretty comparable, New Jersey, others. So obviously there was going to be some mail-in voting. What he voted for then got changed by the governor of that state. He changed it to eliminate the signature verification portion. Doug Mastriano was saying, okay, I'm okay with mail-in voting as long as we have some kind of process, to determine that these people really are who they said they were. So there was a signature verification, 100% signature verification. That was changed. So he got a bad rap towards the end, and they all used that. The Roves and all these people came out at, oh, look, he supports this. And like they wouldn't have anyway, number one. But number two, they totally misrepresented what he voted on. He did not vote on something that just said anybody can mail it in and there won't be any verification or anything like that. But he didn't back down from that question at all. He was like, yeah, he wanted to answer that question because he knew all this misinformation that was out there. So people like that, to me, that is a sign of conviction, right? I want to address this, as opposed to, well, I'm putting together a paper on it and I'll send you an email or something. I don't know. But he embraced that question. He answered it. Truthfully, I verified everything he said and found out that, yes, this is true. And he's actually the one that's fighting against this now to remove it, because what passed was not what they passed. So it's in the courts right now, and I think it will actually get struck down. But he's a great guy. I really liked him, and it was somebody that I wasn't totally familiar. I mean, I knew who he was, but I had never met him, never interacted with him. So I was pleasantly surprised with the time I spent with him anyway.
And I just want to give a quick update in Pennsylvania. Looks like there was a small little batch that was counted, netted McCormick a few votes, but it's still 1,102 vote margin for Oz. This is what we think is remaining. Actually, I'm waiting for confirmation that some of that vote was not from the 10 precincts in Allegheny. All right. Because if it was, and that's all McCormick got, that's a serious problem. People keep asking me about these overseas mail-in ballots. There are only a couple hundred of them, 200 to 300 maybe. Okay. There are about 2,000 provisionals, which are usually election day ballots that have problems. Oz is leading an election day vote. So that would be, McCormick was supposed to have a big push with military, but guys, there's only 200-300 of them. I mean, that's it. And there are roughly still, like I said, about 8,000 mails that are all around the state. They're all around the state. McCormick won that, his best ever, all around the state by 9 points. When we saw them trickle in on Wednesday, it was more than 8,000. It barely moved the needle. I'm trying to explain this to people. It got Oz from 1,700 to around 12. So even if McCormick was to do another, I don't know, 500 vote margin, you have to expect that he's going to do real bad in those remaining election day votes. It just defies belief, guys. It does. And for instance, an 18-point margin in the early mail-in vote These are late arriving ballots. The early ones that were in the bank were 18 points for McCormick, but the ones that late arrived were even. So it's not. Could the math be there? Yes, but I'm telling you, the math scenarios start to get really ridiculous. Like, you would have to expect something nuts to happen. And for them to not be able to bust Oz's margin down below 1,100 with all that vote in Allegheny is not a good sign. It's not a good sign. It means Trump beat McCormick on election day in his own base. That's the Trump vote. That's the Trump endorsement, by the way. Those are steel workers outside of Pittsburgh going, Trump is the only Republican I ever liked. I'm going to go with who he told, who he endorsed, who he's in back. I mean, that's what happened here. In the end, Oz did get reluctant people. And those who went to Barnette because they didn't like Oz shifted back to McCormick over something. But I can kind of see already how many there were. And I expect the margin to go below 1,000, Don. I do. I just don't think we're going to get close enough to where recounts are viable. And even at this point, by the way, I just don't think with 8,000 ballots he can squeeze out 1,100 margin. Nothing has shown that to be the case. Not even on his best breaks was he ever able to get a margin like that. So you're asking me to believe not only is he going to get it, but that all of the remaining provisional on election day ballots are going to break for not Oz the way they have been anyway. I mean, the math gets ridiculously crazy. Okay. So that's a great point. Back to what you were saying. I just wanted to give people an update, but what you were saying on Mastriano, I think is really important. And by the way, again, Mastriano, the very first poll that comes out, Mastriano's ahead. I think that it's important to note, and that's why I brought up the Clayfish thing. When you interview people, guys, that's the way it goes. Like, there's like, hey, we're getting people set up. We're going to get you situated. And they're like, oh, and they're acting a certain way. The camera goes on. It's time for, and you could see they're trying to be the best person they can be. And that's fine. You want people to outperform, but Don's saying something different here. Like, he's the same guy he was off camera than he is on camera. And not only is that the case, but he intentionally stepped up to address something that normal campaign managers and candidates would say, leave it alone, try to pivot, try to do this. He stepped into it. And that is it doesn't happen all the time. It just doesn't. By the way, somebody had, in response to what we were saying, 20 years looking at DD214s, and that his best guess, that's somebody who dropped from boot camp. Right. You can end up in what's called RHU in the Army. It's not, they only let a few people a cycle do it because they don't want to encourage it. But it's when the drills come together and say, this person doesn't have what it takes. And you know what? It's not a matter of waiting for them to grow. Everyone has a problem, assimilating to military life. And, boot camp is supposed to be uncomfortable. I don't want this person in my Army. And so they'll get together and they will give them the okay to go to RHU, which is Return Home Unit. And that is what it looks like to me. All right. That is what it looks like. And that's why you got the one from 90 and you didn't get the one from 98, which there should have been one. All right. Because the one from 98 is going to have the more, the adjudicated response to it. That's what it's going to be. All right. Yeah, let's see.
Let me say one thing too, because I had some people come back to me, and I saw a comment here in the chat too that it's different. If you're in the reserves, your DD214 is different. DD214 is a DD214. It would be a DD214R if it was. It would be a different label, different title. There's a reason that everybody gets a DD214. So maybe some of the information might be a little different if you're in the reserves, because you might, there can be some things that are different, but the form is the form. So
this is what I was trying to explain to people. There is no reserve equivalent. You're getting a DD214 is a qualifying event. I don't know if I'm explaining the terminology correctly. The minute you go to your initial training, you are on active duty. in order to qualify for DD214, you must be on active duty for a certain amount of time. Most people, almost everybody, gets triggered the minute they go to their service training. We have tons of people here. I live in a military community. They're in the reserves. They're also in the Guard. And the fact is, and it looks like 1,097 we're down to. But when they get a new assignment and they were in the Guard and they had gotten, they have to go for their assignment, whatever it may be, and they get to do their usual work throughout the year that they have to get called for once. In the end, they'll get another one after that assignment. There is no equivalent for it. And then, by the way, when you're done with service, if you ever qualified for a DD214, which the vast majority did, and obviously even she did for the time in her initial training. If you qualified for it at one point, it will be updated throughout the course of your service career. And then when you leave the service, that was another major blunder. Here's my DD214 from when I entered the service. There is no DD214 for when you enter the service. There is a DD214 for when you leave the service. And this attempt to obfuscate, Don, well, those reserves get different things than when yeah, exactly. Johnson said that's what I meant. You get the DD214 when you leave basic training if you're in the reserves. Not that the form is different. Exactly, Johnson. Exactly. What she tried to give was the reserve version of her military jacket in the course of her time, not her final DD214, which means only thing I could think is that there are questions that that DD214 she released raises, but the final one from 98 would put those questions to bed. And there's only one reason why you would not put out that one from 98, because something in it you don't want people to know. Don, that's how did the military adjudicate that involuntary withdrawal? Because eventually the VA has to determine whether or not you're eligible for benefits based on that. Right. And by 98, they would have adjudicated it, my friend.
Here is the bottom line in this whole thing. She has a communications team. As somebody who does this, I know how this works. When you get together and you go over these things, you come up with a strategy. So I'm going to release this, or I'm not going to release this, or here's my message. Here's how I'm going to address this. You never want to address an issue leaving more questions than you had before you addressed it. Yeah. You want to clarify things. You don't want to create additional confusion. And there was the question about the professor, where the adjunct professor, where was this at, and all those kind of things. When you respond to these things, when you end up creating more confusion than there was at the beginning, you're better off just not doing it. I would have never released that form. I would have resigned. I would have resigned. I would have felt so strongly about that. If you're going to release that, I am out of here.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Me too. As somebody who was attached to the campaign, I would have resigned. I said, if you're putting that out, I'm a ghost. Because whether it's now or whether it's 3 months or 6 months from now, someone's going to put in a FOIA and someone's going to find out what happened. And I don't want to be associated with it. The only way I want to be associated with it is when it finally comes back, they can say Rich Barris, the chief pollster, resigned at that time. That's all I want mentioned, at that point. So that also answers another question about the adjunct professor thing. Judson University. I do understand. Eventually confirmed that, in fact, she was an adjunct professor there at some point in time. I don't know whether the time was embellished or what. But here's the thing. Again, it shows what Don is saying, which is that the team itself was not ready for prime time. When you're running for office, you have to get all of this lined up. You can't just mock a reporter for asking a simple question about whether or not you remember, when were you there, Kathy? And she was like, I don't remember. How do you not remember? And then there's this dismissive, what's her name for the Daily Caller wrote the article, and she said, in the end, there may be good explanations for all of this, but it is not conservative to dismiss people like this. It is there's a major red flag when someone is asking a legitimate question and you feel like you're too entitled or something to have to answer that question. And that is a major problem. And by the way, those people tend to not want to answer you about their votes. They tend to not want to explain themselves when it's time for re-election. They don't give a damn. Who are you to question their authority? That's what happens to people like that. So that's why we do this in the beginning. That's I want to show people this though, Don. All right. This is what I was talking about. The Cook Political Report. Can Democrats turn things around? I want to just read this. This is supposed to be a political analysis. Remember that. All right. With just 6 months to go until, and it's Amy Walter of the Political Report, Cook Politico. With just 6 months to go until the November elections, the political environment looks as bleak as ever for Democrats. The president's job approval rating remains mired in the 40s. Actually, I think most people now have them in the high 30s. Inflation has proven to be stubborn and persistent because, and I want to stop this, only because of their fake polls, YouGov and others, is he still mired in the low 40s. All of the good pollsters have him in the 30s, okay? Inflation has proven to be stubborn and persistent, and Americans are overwhelmingly pessimistic about the country's direction, with a whopping 75% saying it's headed on the wrong track. Do they have any chance? And then she goes back and says, we had posited that a few things earlier could help Democrats' prospects. One of them that they had previously posited was an improving political and economic climate, unexpected gains from redistricting, a big event that could shift the focus of the election, and contentious Republican primaries that produce flawed candidates. Before we even get into the rest of it, it does look like redistricting will net Republicans 2 seats, which is an abject failure. Redistricting alone should have netted them more than that. But in any event, in the last week or so, there's been some discussion about whether inflation has, quote, peaked. It won't worsen from here on out, she writes, as if she already knows that, okay? But the bigger challenge for the Biden White House and Democrats is whether they can do anything to ease it. That doesn't look realistic. Here we go. To be fair, when it comes to reducing inflation, it's up to the Fed, not Congress or the White House, to solve it. Moreover, the sort of things that, well, first of all, before I go to moreover, this statement is demonstrably false. She is giving the Biden and the incumbent party, her party, a pass here and trying to make people think that there's nothing that really can be done even if they wanted to. That's false, okay? This is a talking point, Don, from the White House. This isn't real life. This isn't an economist. All right, by the way, if you're going to write a political analysis, steer clear of economic punditry. Steer clear of punditry in any topic where you clearly don't know what the hell you're talking about. The Fed simply funds debt and deficit spending. It is a one-trick pony when it comes to controlling inflation, and they waited too long to even enact that trick. So all that can be done right now, Don, is monetary policy, yes, but by only because you're not forcing the Fed to print more money to support your fiscal mistakes. Fiscal and public policy created ultimately this inflation crisis. Monetary policy only funded it. Quantitative easing. It was I mean, this is, I got to let you respond to that just first and foremost, because this kind of stuff, Don, pisses me off.
Yeah, it's just gotten so ridiculous. I mean, and it has been now for a few years. Let's be honest about it. But what was the thing about where they were? The poll numbers were down despite a booming economy. Oh,
yeah, NBC.
The protests are mostly peaceful. Never mind the building behind me that's on fire. I mean, yeah, and this is just so stupid. Nobody's believing this stuff anymore. They're hurting their own cause by using the actual talking points in there that nobody believes. And nobody believes this. So they can pundit all they want, do all their punditry and carry the water. They can try as hard as they want to, but nobody's buying it anymore, even on the left.
This is, at first I'm like, maybe she's just ignorant of economics, but moreover, the sorts of things the White House and Congress could do to fight inflation. You ready? Like lifting tariffs on China.
Mm-hmm.
You just totally give yourself away. This is outrageous. The tariffs never led to the inflation that you all whined and opined about. Chicken Little, the sky was going to fall, inflation was going to shoot to the moon because of Donald Trump's tariffs, as if we didn't have a tariff regime for 100 years that didn't lead to inflation. I mean, this is incredibly bad. And then she goes on, there's no cure for the stubbornly high gas prices. As if it's none of Joe Biden's fault.
Yep.
He didn't come in and kill the Keystone Pipeline. It's all over the ISM. services PMI and the manufacturing PMI. Because Joe Biden was elected, the mere election of him caused everybody to fear the buildup, the risk that comes with building your inventories up. Because if he does something like shut the economy down or COVID mask, this, that, the other thing, everybody run from the hills. We had one positive case. Everybody shut it down. They feared building up their inventories because they didn't want a situation where the Democrats again led to a lockdown and then they had no way to get rid of these inventories. It's all over the ISM. They say it point blank. He came in and did everything. Everything reversed from the energy independent policy of Donald Trump. It's not on him. This is so disgusting. If I was writing a political piece, I would have just steered clear of all of that anyway. And you guys can all see that all over my articles, years worth, from People's Pundit Daily, from Rasmussen Reports, all over the place when I give my election analysis. It is election analysis. It's not an apology tour for my personal preferred party. The fact is, we don't know whether or not that temporary move from the Fed will, in fact, slow inflation. It slowed it less than expected last month. We're moving now into the summer driving season, and gas is what fuels most of the rise right now in the CPI. If the summer comes, Don, and gas goes to $7, did inflation stop? I mean, this woman is... This is why you had 13 seats leans Democrat that were lost. Because you don't do your job. Or maybe you do the job you think you have, which is being a hack.
Jay just nailed it. All he had to do was nothing. This is the thing. All he had to do was nothing. But he couldn't do that because he had to reverse everything that Donald Trump did. And now here they are. Because of this, because of that strategy, where are we now? Look at the inflation, the gas prices, grocery. We know all these issues, right? The baby formula. I mean, it's one thing after another. Everything this guy has touched, everything he's reversed has turned to crap. It just is. So now here's the problem. So now they're turning this into Orange Man Bad. That's what that article was, Orange Man Bad. Everything is Orange Man Bad, right? They're trying to blame NAFTA when Trump, when he redid all that stuff, that's what the baby for. No, nobody's going to buy that any more than they bought the Putin inflation or the Putin gas prices or the Putin this or that. They're turning this back to make it Orange Man Bad. The problem for them is this. Today's Orange Man is different than it was in 2020. When Joe Biden was running against him. And there was a big thing because everybody was on him. Everybody was on his back, and he was at the lowest point he was in popularity and acceptability and all those kind of things. That's changed because of Joe, because he turned everything around and flipped it around. He screwed it up. Jay was right. All he had to do was nothing. Just nothing, absolutely. And everything would have been fine. But he needs us to be Trump. He's obsessed with Trump. They're all obsessed with Trump. And they will be for the rest of their sad, pathetic lives.
Yeah, that's man. You guys, both of you nailed it. I mean, he had to do everything Trump didn't. He just had to be the anti-Trump. And to pretend as if that these weren't conscious decisions that they made that did this is so disingenuous, Don. It's not even funny. It's so disingenuous. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Again, like I said in the beginning, these people will never be good at what they at least state their job is, because you can't predict the behavior of people you have disdain for. So much disdain, in fact, that you are willing to lie to them like she is lying to them in this piece that's supposed to be political analysis. Again, she's another one, just like Larry and the rest. Once revered election analysts, now the only one who reveres anything that they say is each other. Mm-hmm. Each other, they're the only ones who care about what each other has to say. By the way, just to give people another quick update, it looks like the predictions of how much was even left in Allegheny, Don. We went from, a low end of 1,500 to a high end of 4,000 because there was approximately 6,000 or 7,000. I was trying to make the argument that we knew it would probably be less because it's on the low end of the spectrum, because Republican votes, Democrats are going to lean in these votes. It's not going to be all Republican votes. So if we got 800 and change, out of Allegheny and the remaining 10 precincts that are left, it means it was actually lower than the low end of the estimation, which was between 1,500 and 4,000. It means it's only going to be about 1,300. From what I'm hearing, I'm not sure if it's true, but I was told, I got a message from somebody at the desk that change that I had talked about was actually, in fact, the last 11 precincts. And that means he only netted like 20 votes. Yep. And I mean McCormick, he did better in that batch, but he only netted 20 votes. So if that's true, that's not enough. I mean, that is simply not enough. Could he get him, if he continues this with what's remaining, could he get him below 1,000? Yeah. But I just don't see that 400 vote range. I don't. And when I say 500, I mean below. Al Franken was you remember that. Al Franken was at the time, all of us were like, this doesn't happen. You know, recounts do not change vote totals like this. And he is the threat, you know, he's cited as the threshold because of the vote total that was, I mean, historically, it's on the books. That's what has changed. Normally, it's a lot less than that. Save for a major tabulation error. Somebody had, input thousands of votes incorrectly. I mean, no, I don't, guys, again.
Alan West, same thing with Alan West.
Yeah.
Here in Florida was
That's
Congress.
True. Yep. And they abandoned him.
Yep.
Totally abandoned him. Some of the polling this year is disgraceful. For candidates, Paradigm Strategies doing what they did. Remington Research. I mean, before Remington, in what they did in Ohio to Mandel was a disgrace. And now look what they're doing in Missouri. So the poll from Trafalgar had Greitens up and up pretty significantly. Then they come out, they have Greitens in third and their candidate up pretty significantly. Then the local news outlet just did it with Emerson. And Greitens is not only is Greitens way ahead, he's actually beating the Democrat, which Remington said he was down. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of these establishment, Karl Rove pollsters, and by the way, the people associated with Remington are Team McCormick. All right. But that was not his pollster. So I got to give a hat tip. McCormick's pollster did a good job. Win or lose. He had him up by 1. Win or lose, Don. Mm-hmm. He had the accurate assessment of this race. It was a 2-person race. Barnette fizzled. And, I just want to tip my hat to him because it's hard. That clients want numbers they want. And it's up to you to be strong enough to say, no, this is what is really happening.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and let me just say something, because I've seen a couple comments here. Norm's got one in here. All this stuff with the oil prices, the gas and all these oil prices, this is all intentional. It's not like he did. It's not like when he reversed Trump policies at the southern border. It's not like he didn't know what was going to happen. He knew exactly what was going to happen. This guy actually threatened to jail oil executives for running a company. They're not doing anything wrong. They're not the ones selling fentanyl. The oil executives, they're not selling fentanyl. Those are the things that are coming across the southern border. So it's not like Biden didn't know all of these things. There's something that just came out here today. Remember when they were talking and Psaki was up there all smarmy with, why don't you ask the oil companies why they're not using the leases? Because you got to get permitted. You don't just lease the land from the federal government and then just go start popping wells up. You got to go through a whole bunch of crap. At the same time that they were talking about that and the media was reporting on it, there's 4,000 leases out there. At the same time, they knew that Biden, when he came into office, he changed the model that they use to assess when you get the lease and you apply for the permit. There's a model they use, much like the climate change people and all this stuff. They're never right, but the models are. But they created a model that made it almost impossible to get a lease. So that's why those leases you were not approved to go on with your permit and start drilling oil in this land. They did this all on purpose. But let me just read this real quick. So this is the article I was reading earlier today. Biden administration quietly admits math error is causing massive oil gas permitting delays. Quietly. This is the media. This is the media reporting this, that they quietly did this. Why was it quiet? Because the media didn't report on it. And now they're reporting how they quietly did this. They're all in cahoots. This is just so stupid at this point, but it is 100% intentional to all those who made comments talking about that, about small America paying for Trump.
Yep. And Norm says, I have some friends still in the oil fields in North Dakota saying the EPA limited production of 45% to avoid spills. Well, this is this is what there is an administrative state policy difference in general between just, Democrats, period, and Republicans typically. But Trump was very different when it came to this stuff. Even I'm not even sure. Well, no, we can be sure to say that, there are certain energy production ventures that never, even under somebody like a Mitt Romney, would never have happened under Donald Trump. That did happen under Trump. That never would have happened under Mitt Romney. My tongue's all tied up here. Bush badly wanted to get ANWR. Didn't happen. By the way, that's another thing Biden put the kibosh on. So it's like, there's this article is just filled with garbage. And, it's not intentional anymore. I mean, it's not unintentional, and neither is the policy. The coverage of it isn't unintentional. It isn't. She knows what she is doing is misleading those readers, and what the Biden administration is doing, knew damn well. How could you not? How could you not? Do you really believe that? And by the way, she actually cites this. Do you really believe that somehow any event spending more money to cover the cost for a consumer is going to lower inflation? You're talking about a temporary blip in the CPI. There's a difference. It will increase inflation to spend money you don't have. You know what else increases inflation? Sending billions, tens of billions of dollars to foreign conflicts when you don't have the money to do it.
You know what else increases inflation? Rising energy prices. It's not just your gas, it's your energy prices to run your factory, to run all these kind of things. All of these things are working together. The comment about the 45% production, that's part of this modeling. The modeling doesn't just affect new permitting processes. It affects all permits that are in place. And they're admitting there was a small math error. They think they might be able to fix it in the next year or so. A mathematical error. It's going to take them a year to fix that. Oh, that's going to be great. I'm sure it'll be much better when they fix it. New and improved.
And it looks like, actually, another quick update here. I'm sorry. Let me do this correctly to make sure I'm right, because it looks like somehow this may be some election day stuff that came in. It looks like Oz actually did better, and that one may have bumped it out a little bit more. It's just, you can't have this going back and forth like this, Don, is my point. Yeah, now we're back up to 1,095. So we were at 1,020. It took it down a little bit to about 1,090. Now we're back up to 1,095. You can't have this back and forth. It has to be consistent chunks of votes that chip away at the margin, hovering around 1,100 votes. I, again, expected this to fall well within, that 500 to 1,000 mark, 700 plus or minus 50. This isn't okay. I'll let people have their time in the sun. I just think it's incredibly horrible to consider destroying your party's chances at winning this seat because you spent a lot of your money to get elected.
All I got to say is count the freaking votes, man. What the hell is going on?
Get it done.
Is this a banana republic? What the hell are we doing here? The election was on Tuesday, everyone. It's Friday.
It is a banana republic.
This is insane.
Math is racist.
There you go.
Yeah, because it doesn't really matter. Again, it doesn't really matter whether it's incompetence or it's shenanigans. That's not the point. The point is, this is banana republic bull, you know what. And there should be none. The people deserve better than this. They do. And if you thought that there was significant improvement in Pennsylvania, you were wrong. And somebody, it's like, came at me on, the other day about, well, you got to wait for this. Well, you got to wait for that. And those are all BS excuses. We do just fine in the state of Florida. We count votes just fine in the state of Florida. You have a certain deadline that votes must be in by. If somebody, I know we have these things, they're called laws, and I know it's a novel concept. You have to follow them. And if a supervisor of election does not follow them, they get removed. I know it's called accountability, not another novel concept. And ever since we had this in place, it seems that we can count 9 times the votes faster within the same night. Does something change here and there a little bit? But this is not acceptable. There is no legitimate.
The more we go to this mail-in stuff, the more we go to this pre-collection stuff at boxes, drop boxes, and all these kind of crap. This stuff should make the voting faster, or the counting of the votes faster. This should have increased the speed. It's the opposite. Now it's delaying it. Oh, well, now we're going to go count this box over here. It's like, knock it off, man. You want to disenfranchise people? You want to drive down? You want to talk about voter suppression? Who's doing the voter suppression, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is insane. Count the freaking votes. Yes.
I'll tell you, I didn't see the bill introduced from Dan Sullivan from Alaska, but I'll check it out. That one was from Getter. But I will check it out. He probably is trying to get, it's bananas are too expensive. It's a potato republic.
Oh no, Brian Stelter will be president. He's the head potato.
It's ridiculous, Don. This is ridiculous. And but it doesn't matter which side it benefits. It's ridiculous. I said the other day, ask Laura, she'll tell you. As soon as they were like, well, there's this much still in Philadelphia election day, I'm like, what? Now I knew that was going to, one was obviously going to benefit Oz. One was obviously, it doesn't matter whether it's Allegheny and it's going to be pro McCormick, or if it's Philadelphia, it's going to be pro Oz. You should have counted your votes already. On Florida, we have a deadline. Absentee ballots must be in by this time during the day. We handle the absentee ballots before. This way, those late arrivers, and when I say late, I don't really mean late. I mean, they arrived on election day. They can be handled and processed, and without problem. But the election day vote, Don, I mean, if you're that incompetent when you can't even count your election day vote, you are a third world state. I mean, that's it. I mean, there's no other. I mean, at this point, we're not talking about late arriving excuse me. At this point, we're not talking about late arriving ballots, Don. We're just simply talking about votes that were cast that day.
We're talking about early arriving votes, if you really want to get down to it, right?
Yeah.
How many early votes were there collected before voting day itself? So it should improve the process and make it faster, more streamlined. But for some reason, nope.
It can't happen.
It just shifted another 20 votes. We just counted 20 more, and then we're gonna take lunch and we'll come back. It's like you had counties
560, and it shifted by 20 votes. I mean, this is just. It's crazy, man.
This is stupid.
Maybe if we add participation awards for counting, maybe then they'll
come out and we'll get more volunteers. And the thing is, they're not lacking people. This is not a matter of like not having the staff. Allegheny went home. They said, and they didn't come back on Thursday until like midday. And they had said originally they weren't going to reconvene to count the election day until today, which is what they're doing now. And I really do think that last 500 votes that we saw was the last 10 precincts. So if that was the last 10 precincts and Dave McCormick netted 20 votes, I don't know what else to say. Mm-hmm. A prolonged legal battle is going to risk control of the U.S. Senate. I'm sorry. Because you're going to create a lot of bad blood, and there already is. This was a hard-fought fight. Unlike Ohio, where even Dolan, pat the guy in the bed. When I see that man, I'm going to shake his hand. Just because when you lose, you move on. You don't pull this pouty crap. I'm not going to support either McCormick or Oz. See, was it about Oz's fight with Kathy Barnette and Sean Hannity? Because even if McCormick edges it out, she refuses to say that she'll support McCormick. So it wasn't about it, was it? It was about Kathy Barnette, wasn't it?
Yep.
Come on. This isn't Trump who raised your hand. Trump didn't raise his hand because Trump's entire point was this entire panel can't get it done. I love them. Some of these guys I think are good guys, but they'll buckle under the pressure of Washington. I won't. So no, I'm not going to commit to vote, to supporting them. Because there's this line, Don, from CPAC 2015 that I remember. I heard him say it. I told Laura, I'm like, here's the headline from Trump's speech, which almost nobody was really listening to seriously. And he had said, we can't just have another Bush. We can't just have another. It can't just be anybody because the country has so many problems. They're so severe. It has to be somebody who has a record of getting things done, but also doesn't owe anybody anything, isn't beholden to anybody. That's not Kathy Barnette. She took $2 million from McIntosh at the Club for Growth. People, if you don't know the Club for Growth, I will give Hannity that. And I'm no fan of Sean Hannity. He is right about how the Club for Growth operates. You don't get $2 million just to try to hurt Donald Trump. Yes, that is what they were trying to do ultimately, but you owe them for that $2 million. You owe them a vote to remove a tariff. You owe them something. You do not get it for nothing, period. Anyway, I don't want to keep Don too long here. Don, what do you got coming up at on Saturday, noon Eastern Standard Time tomorrow? By the way, we'll be in the field with the Public Polling Project this weekend, so maybe I can give you a little bit of an update when we know at least about what we're seeing, something we're seeing. What do you got going on?
So we've got Dr. Naomi Wolf.
Love her.
Yeah, she's cool. So great interview with her on just talking about all this information that she has, right, on all the vaccines and all these kind of things. Really interesting conversation. Speaking of Doug Mastriano, so looking forward to that as well. So talk to him about, obviously the knives are out for him already, right? So we already know what this guy's going to go through, and just kind of want to see what he's ready for, what he's planning on doing to push forward with his campaign. And of course, you will be here, and hopefully we'll have some new fresh data. That'd be fantastic. And Peter Hussey with the latest on national security. So we got a lot of stuff going on tomorrow. I had mentioned last week that we're going to have former Governor Scott Walker on. He's going to be on the following week. So we will have him the following week. But tomorrow we got a great show lined up. Everybody check us out, donsmithshow.locals.com. We're on Rumble at Don Smith Show and noon Eastern every Saturday. Looking forward to it.
Memada is now up to 93 cents with the money. I love one of these things that I love doing is watching Predicted. People from both sides, all sides of campaigns frantically text me, predict it throughout the night every time results are coming in. And the money, the truth is, guys, they don't know what they're doing. At this point now, I would say the money is reflecting reality. Okay. But during the election, they don't know how to read the tea leaves as they come in. They don't know how to read them, as that we heard during the John Frederick show. The tea leaves, they call them in Pennsylvania. In Florida, we call it the right hook. Because first you will get those blue votes constantly that come in first, and they're coming in from Broward, they're coming in from Dade, they're coming in from Orange, and everyone is sitting there looking like there's going to be this overwhelming margin for Democrats, and then the election day vote and the panhandle comes in, and we call it the right. Every state's got its own little name, but they don't know how to read them. They don't know what they're doing. So McCormick's up by 10,000 votes. He's a 75-25 favorite. I mean, it's just kind of funny to watch. Yeah. I laugh at it, Don. I do, but I can't wait for Naomi Wolf's interview tomorrow. I'm sure that's going to be a great. By the way, does she get her Twitter account back? Do you know?
I guess I'm not sure. No,
since she was right.
Yep.
She lost her Twitter account for simply making a hypothesis about certain impacts from certain Fauci juice. And, this is crazy to me, Don, that people lost their Twitter accounts for being correct. It's a disguise. I think Robert Malone didn't he?
Yeah.
I think he did. Yeah.
He did too.
So where is Dr. Naomi?
Yeah, I'm not sure she's back
Twitter
on there.
She should absolutely get it back.
Yep. I know she's on. I know she's on Getter.
I saw that. I saw that, and I follow her there, but some of these people that were wronged, and they were wronged, then it's not right. It's just not right. All right. So last minute, again, Dr. Naomi Wolf on with Don tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time. Myself on with Don. We're going into the field with the Public Polling Project. So hopefully we'll have we'll have a little bit of at least a taste to see. I'll give my thoughts about what I see. And let's just loads of good stuff coming up. We'll bring you updates on the elections, what's going on. We didn't even get a chance to talk about it, Don, but that vote in North Carolina was it was unbelievable. It was a story, and the media ignored it. Ted Budd did what we suggested, which was make sure people knew about that endorsement, and he beat Pat McCrory everywhere except for Mecklenburg County, which McCrory held on to his lead by just, they didn't count it yet, by just 80 votes. So apparently there is 3 days that Mecklenburg can continue to accept absentee ballots after Election Day, not just Mecklenburg, but all of North Carolina. But Don, the vote, 613,000 Democratic votes, just over, almost 760,000 Republican votes. That's a semi-close primary where Democrats have a registration edge over Republicans. That's how many independents went and voted in the Republican primary. Ladies and gentlemen, between Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, this is going to be an R plus something electorate. R plus 4, maybe? I don't know. It is looking dire for Democrats at this point, if this is the turnout edge we're going to be seeing. All right, my friend, thanks as always. Give Brenda our best, as always. And I'm sure, I knew it.
Love you, Brenda. Love you too, Don.
Love you too, Laura. And the kids. We love the kids. Kids are awesome.
They love you guys too.
They love you guys too.
As you can hear the Roro running around in the background.
He's getting awesome. To be an utter monster. He is awesome, but he's
Roman, the destroyer of all
Roman the
things.
Destroyer. It's like the Roman, like he's like Conan the Destroyer. That's why we call him.
He's a walking hurricane. Like I clean one room and behind me he's destroying. I love him.
That's his job.
Mantra.
But that's his job.
While I hum the Conan music. Bum, 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 bum. Right? He's just stuff just flying everywhere.
And the whole time I'm like, I love him. I love him. I love him.
Then he turns around, Don, and does something. You've seen it. And then he turns around and does something super cute. And you're like, you can't even get mad at him. But he's something else.
He is. Absolutely.
But I'll see you tomorrow at noon, my friend. Thanks as always for joining.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Great questions
later.
Today.
Yeah, definitely. That was Don Smith. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, noon Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. All right. Don Smith Show. Watch his feed. Watch mine. I'll also sign up at Rumble. That's where you got to watch it. Don Smith Show on Rumble. And check out his locals. DonSmithShow.locals.com. All right. I did want to bring up this crazy TikTok video with him. But I wanted to get to all your questions, and at least we weren't 2:30 today. We were 2:15, but we did get to basically all of your questions, which was pretty good, except for the Democratic. I didn't know about the minimum wage thing to combat inflation. I didn't see who did that. Someone had put that forward. That would be a calamitous economic event. I mean, even the Labor Department, even Bill Gates, before they totally went woke, used to openly admit the Labor Department data, we have about 50 years on it, leading up until the Trump era, showed that minimum wage hikes absolutely do cost jobs. There is a Goldilocks zone where you can stay in. And unfortunately, many cities did not stay in the Goldilocks zone. Some states did not stay in the Goldilocks zone. And there's years, decades of data to show that it will hurt the labor market. All right. With that in mind, what is best in life? The question. I'll answer that one myself, though. Family. You've got to be kidding me. Oz is back up over 1,000 and over 1,100. I mean, 1,101. I see Don. You still down there? I mean, Don. It is what it is. 11 back now up to 1,101. You can't have this back and forth. That's my final update on the Pennsylvania Senate race for the show. We will absolutely bring you more, of course, as we go on. But I think the point Don and I are making, you can't have this back and forth and catch up. It's not going to happen. And this is not a margin that gets changed in a recount. I'm sorry for McCormick fans. I always call balls and strikes. And I'm calling this one what it is. Hail freaking Mary. All right. So
What is best in life is watching my husband win time and time again over
I was going to say
every
family.
pollster, because he is the best pollster in the entire world. I challenge anyone to debate my husband.
I love you, baby. I love you. I got to be honest. I was kind of laughing a little bit watching the A poor guy with Nate Cohen going back and forth on Twitter. I had a quote tweet it, and I said, honestly, I find this somewhat amusing. They're like, well, if we waited for party again and education, and then Nate's like, but that wouldn't help me because if the Siena polls would not have been helped by waiting by party. And I'm just laughing my ass off because they are totally clueless. So when you start to see these Siena polls come back out again with Nate Cohen, guys, understand he has no idea what the hell he's doing. He hasn't learned a thing because he's still him and the A4 guy going back and forth, can't figure it out for crap. In Georgia, I will say this before I let it go. Don, you still there, Don? Is Don still there? Can I pop his thoughts in? Can you give us your thoughts on Georgia? Yeah. There he is. All right. I didn't. Yeah. I spoke to another pollster last night who was in it. He wanted to talk and he wanted to see what I saw in Georgia. And he was just like, yeah, what do you think?
It certainly looks like Kemp. I mean, there's just, I don't know. I just don't see the Purdue numbers being there. I'm not sure. Hopefully you're seeing something different. But from what I'm seeing, it looks like Kemp's going to kind of run away with this thing, which still surprises me. I'm just surprised that he's caught on with people and that he wasn't kind of cast aside. But it is what it is. Herschel Walker, I mean, obviously great position. I'm a little nervous because I'm hearing all these Rove people and Mitch McConnell. I heard him say it earlier today. Really excited about Herschel Walker, and it's kind of making me a little nervous. But I love Herschel Walker so far. He's got to prove, he would have to do something to show to me that he's not who I think he is. But it makes me really nervous when I hear people like that patting him on the back already. And I heard Jim Jordan earlier this week. Actually, they asked him about leadership in Congress and about McCarthy. And he actually was like, well, yeah, so he's all on board with McCarthy. And that really, that knocked him down 2 pegs in my book. But yeah, so I'm a little nervous.
I couldn't believe that
thing. I couldn't either. It's like, really?
I couldn't believe my ears.
This is
Bannon
leadership.
told me. He was like, did you see this? And I was like, oh my. And he's like, oh yeah, ultra MAGA right here, bro. Ultra MAGA.
I was waiting for his answer. I'm like, yes, because they asked him about leadership. What do you think about the leadership? Specifically about Kevin McCarthy. And I was like, yeah, here you go, Jim. Here you go. And no. And it was like, oh no. Oh no.
Can we have Mark Meadows back, please? Can we have Mark Meadows back? I'll tell you, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to Georgia, we had seen a scenario where turnout, the bottom could fall out of Kemp. I mean, he has no chance to win a runoff. He just can't again, I don't know if he wants me to say who I was talking with, but I was talking with, well, I don't think he'll care, but I was talking with Robert and, he's just seeing that those undecideds that we had, where it clearly could have, at the point when we were polling, it looked like, you could keep Kemp below 50. But there's this weirdness going on, which is, remember Jim Crow 2.0? People are telling him, if Kemp was so bad, why did Democrats attack him? This was the mistake I think Team Trump made, not being involved with that bill more, like I said, because then at least he would have some more credibility. The movie certainly helped make the case against Kemp, but at this point, people are like, well, Democrats came after him viciously. So obviously that reform bill wasn't that bad. That's the way some Republicans are thinking. And of course, we know that's crap. But there's also, 3-1 advantage with Kemp going unanswered on the air. I don't know. You just can't do that against an incumbent. You just can't do it. But Purdue and Team Purdue and others are fighting the air of inevitability. And that is always so difficult to beat, this inevitability. Like, I'm going to vote for so-and-so because he's going to win. I would argue that some people were hurt by that with Oz. That the polls were showing Oz not only was gaining, not only holding his lead, but actually, in fact, potentially gaining. And I think some people were like, I'm just going to go with Oz. He's going to win. That would have weighed on me if I was a voter in Pennsylvania, Don. Like, I really liked Carla Sands. That woman went nuclear at an event and was like, Here we are. We have Dave McCormick. He's China first. We have Kathy Barnette. She's Kathy first. We have Mehmet Oz. He's Turkey first. And I'm the only damn one who's America first. I mean, it was like, whoa. And she was handpicked by Trump, handpicked by him. But at the same point, I would have known that voting for her would have been basically against the air of inevitability. I don't know what I would have, again. But that's a good example. She's
a great example of why you need to, it's not just the candidate and the quality of the candidate and those things. You've got to have a team. You've got to have a team that can get you out there, can get you in front of people, that can raise money, that can do, that's the business side of campaigning. And it's very important.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, you know what? Let's just go out, take it out here together. Don't miss Don's show at noon tomorrow, Eastern Standard Time. Sign up on Rumble to check it out. Don Smith Show on Rumble and donsmithshow.locals.com. Folks, have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. Don and I will see you at noon on the Don Smith Show. Don't miss it. Later, Don. Thanks as always, my friend. Talk to you in a bit.
Deuces.
Right.
Deuces. Bye, guys.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats is restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. And take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.